So what we're going to do today is that we're just going to clean up the tank and check that everything is working properly. And first I will just rinse it off with water and detergent, and then I will wipe it off with some thinner, and then we will look at all these things so that they are alright. And I will take a look at the sander unit looks like inside, if I can open it up. And here's a small advice. One of the best solvents you can find for removing this kind of undercoats is plain petrol, as you can see here. And to get this bitumen asphalt paint off, I found out that the easiest way is to make sure that your fuel tank is completely 100% free from fuel inside, and then use a heat gun. With a heat gun, then you can just peel it off. And over here I started to try to get all the gravel out here before I take this apart to show you what it looks like inside. You can see that this tank has been sitting on the Jeep since 1988, and it's in reasonably good shape actually, just because of this asphalt paint. Only one mistake so far, and that is that you have this band sitting across, and this bolt is sensitive, so a little bit of rust on that one, and then it just snapped. But next section here will be what the pump looks like. Hang on guys. I think these two, the one you see there and there, that's positioning aids for your fuel pump in itself. And this ring on top here spins somehow. So I'm gonna see if I can get out some more of this gravel and sand before I continue. And if you press on it, then you can actually feel that this one is holding a gasket under it, because it's flexing a little bit. So we just want this one to slide anti-clockwise. It's been sitting now for 10 to 15 minutes, and I think I've lubricated the gasket. And there it released. So now we will see if we can get the fuel pump up after 30 years. And that's your floatant, so this is what it looks like. So all there is to it. So this one we tested out separately. And here's all the dirt that you can expect to have in that flange there. Well, so this is all the rust that was on the tank. It's a little bit in this area. A couple of spots over here. You can see that the edge over here has taken some rust. And underneath, where there wasn't much of a asphalt paint on it, there's a little bit more, but it's mostly surface rust. What I've done is that I sandblasted it now, and then I've covered it with a rust conversion paint. Here we have something which contains tannic acid, so it's a rust converter. It bonds up the iron ions when they are dissolved with phosphoric acid, which is also inside. You have a couple of different ones that serve the same purpose. So here's the Swedish one, here's another one, an American one. The benefit with using them is that if you have any surface rust after you sandblasted it, it will immediately be converted into something that doesn't continue rusting. So now we will put on a zinc coat as the next step, and then we will top coat it. This is after spray painting it 2 times with the Rustoleum zinc galvanizer spray paint. There's a couple of things that I haven't mentioned that I should have maybe highlighted before when you could see it. It was that there are certain areas on these tanks that are particularly sensitive to rust. This entire tank is made out of stainless steel that is pressed, and then it's been welded. The weld lines in themselves are more sensitive to rust than the stainless steel. And if you scroll back this video, you will see that I had more rust along the weld lines than I had as spots on the entire surface. The reason is that the weld lines, they are a little bit different composition, the weld, than the stainless steel, so they rust more easily. Particularly sensitive areas are on the underside. In this case, I had more rust on this, along this weld line, than on the other ones, because this one is facing forward in the car. Now, if you would find, for example, that you have a lot of rust in between in here, which is kind of difficult to see, that is a tricky one. You have to look at that to determine if you're just going to buy a new tank or if you're going to keep your old tank. Now, when you spray painted it with zinc and rust protection in general, what is important is that you get all the rust off. Converting rust, yeah, there are the rust converters, and those ones, they work on surface rust, but they don't penetrate all the way in. So sometimes if you use a rust converter, then you can just take a knife and you scratch it and you will see the rust under the rust converter. The problem with that is that you still have the normal rust there, and the rust in itself, it contains water. So basically you want to get rid of all the rust, because that water is still going to be active, and with the porosity that the first rust has formed, it will continue rusting as soon as it gets humid. So when you pick your coat, there are a couple of things to think about. Well, you don't want water to penetrate through your coating. So by having a very impermeable, or like resistant to penetration of water coating, you'll have a good protection towards rust in the future. Now, if you have applied this kind of zinc coating, then the purpose with this one is that it actually reacts before any iron reacts, because zinc in itself is a sacrifice metal. So if you have a coating that is properly applied, and it would allow water to penetrate out, because all plastic coatings will eventually do that, then the zinc is reacting with the water before your iron in your tank. Well, an impermeable coating, that is a very tough resistant coating to water penetration, that you can find if you get 2-component coatings. So, or a powder coating, because that becomes it is kind of a 2-component, although it's mixed as a powder. But the 2-component, that means that you have a reaction going on when you have coated your object, in this case tank. So having that reaction, what is that reaction? Well, that's the plastic molecules that are reacting with each other, so they make like a cross-link network, and that is more impermeable, like more resistant to water penetration. So I'm going to use a 2-component epoxy based coating to coat this one. So here's our 2-component coating system, and then you just mix one part of this one with one part of that one, and I dilute it with thinner so I get the right viscosity so I can paint it onto this one over here. So when you mix these 2 components, it's important that you bring in one component into the other one in the right order. One is the base and one is the hardener. If you bring in the base into the hardener, it's going to be too much of hardener, the active compound that starts the reaction, so then everything will cure immediately. So you want to bring in the hardener into the base, meaning that it will be very diluted in the beginning and then it will be increased up to its 50% concentration. So then the reaction will not start immediately and you have some time before it starts curing or hardening, cross-linking. So now we mix the two components together and I'm just about to feel the viscosity of it, and I think this is a little bit too high, so I'm going to dilute it with 5% thinner and then we'll be ready to apply it. And the last thing you want to do is to check the fuel level indicator, and the only thing I've done with this one is to clean it up a bit. I made sure that that ground there is properly seated. So to check the level indicator or the floatant in your tank, you just connect it to one of these multimeters and you check the resistance. So it goes from 0.3 ohms up to about 44 ohms when it's half full, and about 90 ohms when it's full. So that one works. Now when you've done that, apart from cleaning it up, you may want to change the gasket. You got everything down, then even though the old gasket looks pretty good shape, I replace it. So here's the new gasket. Filter, and this one was actually very clean, but you may want to reverse flush it. Well, you put it into petrol and you blow some air into that hole there, then you will flush out all possible contaminations that are sitting in this filter. The tank in itself is painted, and on the top I made some efforts to see how shiny you can get it. So this two component paint is actually like it's actually very easy to grind down with a sandpaper. So I used an 800 grit sandpaper and then I clear coated it with a two component polyurethane coating, and it becomes very shiny and nice. Not that you need it though. You can see how here on the bottom it looks like if you just take the two component and you brush it on. So this is how it becomes then. And that's going to go into the skid plate or the petrol tank holder. In this one I have primed, got rid of all the rust, sandblasted it, primed it with a zinc primer with 90% zinc, and then it's bitumen coated. And it's got this rubbery feeling, so it's like it was when I took it off. Here's the new strap that's holding the tank. It costs about $20 to buy a new one, and that was the solution to when I snapped this bolt. Used to be some kind of paper here on the back of the tank strap, which is not supplied with a new replacement strap. So I will just put thin silicone sheet in between the tank strap and the tank. If anybody knows what this is, it used to sit on the top like this, and why you have it there is like a distance from the tank. You can write that in the comments. I will myself just place this one back on top here, so it's sitting where it should be sitting. The Side straps, yeah, these ones are prone to rust. Here also zinc coated or zinc primed with only the 2-component epoxy paint on them. It states, yeah, I snapped the bolt over here and I ordered the wrong fuel supply and fuel vent tubes. This is something that you may want to pay attention to. If you have this sort of tank, which is 14.5 gallons, I don't know exactly what that converts into liters, but it's the smallest tank that came with the 4.2 liters straight 6 Wranglers in the end of the 80s. This tank requires certain fuel hoses, and if you go into the automatic engines, that will tell you which ones you need, and you just order them, then this is what you will get. And they're too short. You can see here the length of the original ones is almost twice as long as the one that is indicated as a replacement part. Well, I hope this covers the entire tank restoration, and I wish you all the best with yours. It's a lot of work. I'll say this one took me 2 full days, but the benefit with all this is that it's like one module, so now it's just to mount it back under the car. Thanks for listening, guys. Now, since you watched this far, I will give you possibly the best advice when you're working with this, and it's to take your telephone when you start this job, put on the permanent flash so that you have a spotlight, and then stick it into the tank like this. Now you can see in the rear end corner here that there's something black. That is a bit of rust converter that I put on there, because these tanks, they do rust inside as well. There was a little spot, you will see it in a moment when I show you the short videos that I took before I applied this. But this rust comes from water that gets mixed with your fuel, or if it's been standing for a long time. So you're gonna have water sometimes in your tank, preferably not, but it's gonna be on the bottom because it's higher density than the petrol. So I had some spots right down there in the corner. You can see some of it is still left right there on the left side of the image now, and some of it was on the right side of the image now. So I just applied a little bit of rust converter there. Some of this water is going to be present as humidity, so if we're moving up with the camera, I'm going to focus out. Then you see the inlet hose or the outlet hose for the fuel vapors that may come out from your tank, which is connected to the charcoal canister. They have a little rubber tube that is connected with 2 clips. You can see that those clips were a little bit rusted as well, and if those ones are rusted straight through, well, then that part is probably not going to be possible to fix, because you can't reach in there, and those clips were attached there when the tank was made. So you can inspect your entire tank by using your mobile phone like this. Here you see a little bit on these ones here. They're alright, that's the inlet of fuel and the outlet or the ventilation. And the rest of it is clean from rust. So check this first before you start a renovation project like this.